Hello Summoners, and welcome back to another ProGuides video. My name is Nathan Ng, and today we'll be talking about the meta update for patch 10.24. In this series, we will talk about the trends that you guys need to know about. That doesn't really mean specific champions, because we have plenty of videos covering the best of the best. No, this is more about the general things like which classes of champions are doing well, what items are very overtuned, and what rune choices are on the rise. But before we dive right into all of that, today's question of the day is, what role do you think will be the most broken in the start of the new season? Without a doubt, top lane has the best champs in the current meta. But we have about a month and a half until Season 11 officially starts, so what role do you think is going to be OP by then? Let us know your answers in the comments down below. And one last thing, we have a very special sale going on over at ProGuides.com for Black Friday. You can get over 35% off of our memberships by using the code BLACKFRIDAY right now. Over at ProGuides, we have the best roster of coaches as well as the top tier courses created by your favorite pro players to help you improve. Trust me, you do not want to miss this. And with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and hop right into the video.
To start things off in the top lane, we're going to be looking at Stridebreaker. To talk about what makes it such a strong item on the champions that use it, let's look at the fighter mythics list. Trinity Force basically just gives more damage, while Gore Drinker's appeal is the crazy healing on the active and ability haste granted by the mythic passive. Those options are definitely nice on some champions or for certain situations, but you can sort of get that extra damage and healing from other options. But what Stridebreaker brings is completely unique. It gives a small gap closer, slow, and movement speed while being an offensive item. Before, the only item that really helped with gap closing was Righteous Glory, but that meant building a tank item with no offensive stats, purely for an active with a pretty long cooldown. The result was that obviously no Bruisers or Juggernauts in the top lane would really build it. So take a champion like Darius. No matter how fed he is, he's pretty easy to kite, which is why most Darius players know that they have to run Ghost to carry with him, and once you use it, you're basically useless until it's back up. Now with Stridebreaker, you can have an item that you can build naturally, since it provides the stats that you want, with an extra active that has such a short cooldown that you can even use it more than once in extended teamfights. And Darius isn't the only one that uses it well. Set has made a return as a successful top laner with this option, and even Udyr has a high win rate when he's using this item. Sure, he's a jungler, but I figured I'd mention it here anyway. Ravenous Hydra was already a core item with most bruisers on the top lane, but the item update has seen it become way more OP, and it still provides a ton of pushing power. But what really makes the item shine is the Omni Vamp that it now has, which it inherited from the Death's Dance. If you don't know what Omni Vamp is, it basically means that you heal for a percentage of all damage you do, including magic and even true damage. Ravenous Hydra is so strong that pretty much every AD top laner picks it at some point, and Fiora even builds it as her first item. Unlike its previous rendition, it procs on abilities and even items such as Gore Drinker. So with autos and a couple of abilities, you can instantly wave clear, healing pretty much to full in the process. The last item trend that we have in the top lane is Death's Dance. This item is seen somewhere in the build of pretty much every AD top for a couple of reasons. First of all, most of the time you're laning top lane, you're against another AD Bruiser, making it a direct answer to people matching you at the side lane at mid to late game. Second of all, when it comes to teamfighting, the damage staggering passive can be huge, especially when you get a takedown to cleanse the bleed damage from yourself. Much like Stridebreaker does with utility, Death's Dance gives you a huge amount of effective tankiness, as long as you can meet the condition of taking down an enemy, all the while without having to sacrifice a slot for an actual tank item, meaning you can still carry just as hard, or even harder. So with those three items that we talked about, we should talk about Bruisers and their state in the game, since those are the champs that actually build them. Coming into the preseason, everybody thought that tanks would be dead and assassins would probably be obscenely broken, but that wasn't quite right. Assassins were in a strong spot, but the strongest picks in the game have actually been the tanks, with Bruisers being an extremely close second. With that said, tanks have been reeled in a bit, and the only champ that can hope to match Bruisers in the later stages of the game, Kayle, has been hit hard in this patch, with the champion herself and her three core items all receiving nerfs at the same time. The conclusion: Bruisers are now the definitive kings and queens of the meta, so be sure to abuse them fast if you're trying to get the MMR up in this preseason. Remember, the preseason is about finding balance before the actual season begins, so the meta changes a lot, and it changes fast. If you need some help keeping up with the meta, visit us at ProGuides.com, where our coaches can help you learn more efficiently, or just go ahead and keep watching these YouTube videos. We really appreciate either or. In the first couple of patches of preseason, things have been extremely diverse in the jungle. Just to name a few of the top junglers so far in preseason, we have Graves, Nunu, Hecarim, Kha'Zix, and Amumu. This is probably the healthiest the jungle has been in a long time, without any one specific class of champion just dominating things. With that being said, this patch is targeting a lot of champions and their core items, so we might see things shake up a little bit. Jungle is a complicated role, so it's still too early to tell, but with Kraken Slayer getting a huge buff on this patch, any champion with an on-hit build is getting an indirect buff. We expect Master Yi in particular will become a pretty popular pick this patch. Just like with top lane, Death Dance is a dominant item in the jungle. In fact, it just shows up in the builds of pretty much any AD champions in the role. When an item is so good that you see it on Graves, a marksman, Kha'Zix an assassin, and Hecarim, a bruiser, you have to wonder why it didn't get hit on this patch. Well, either way, just be sure that you're taking advantage of this item while you can. Previously, we touched on the prediction that assassins would dominate preseason, and while they may not be completely solo carrying games, they have actually been the strongest pick as far as mid lane goes. With Eclipse, assassins get a huge lead and can actually fight tanks and bruisers. And with Duskblade, they can get into a team fight, take out a high priority target, and then use the item's passive to reposition and wait out cooldowns, or even take a sneaky route out of the fight completely. So assassins have been pretty strong due to how OP their items are, but this is furthered by how many mages are struggling to find the item builds that work. Any mage that builds tier before has been hit hard. Maybe the 10.24 changes will change that up a little bit, but it'll take some time before we know how much these buffs will do. I'm just gonna come out and give a hot take on this. Immortal Shield Bow is good, but it's been highly overrated, with most people building it for the safety it provides even when they aren't really in danger. And they should be opting out for better damage that the Kraken Slayer gives. And with Kraken getting a huge buff on this patch, it is now definitively the go-to option as a carry. Immortal Shield Bow is still good as a defensive as intended, but you should really be using Kraken Slayer as your default mythic. Itemization can often get a bit confusing, especially when it comes to knowing when to itemize offensively versus defensively on a hyper carry. What are your personal strategies on how to build these items? I'd like to know. If you go back in time, there was a meta when lethality marksmen ruled the roost. Jhin, Misfortune, and Varus were able to use a cheaper, stronger early game build to stop lane and then snowball to a victory as they rolled over the squishy targets in the mid game and ended the game before anybody else even had a chance to scale. Well, with the arrival of the preseason, many people have complained about how marksmen seem kind of weak, or even just downright bad, but that's just the ones doing it wrong. One build that is trending right now makes Jhin and Misfortune just as strong as any other top picks in the preseason. The build involves rushing Eclipse as your mythic instead of just the normal crit mythics intended for marksmen. You then build the Collector, which combines lethality and crit, and you can transition your build into another crit item including Infinity Edge. The result is a super strong early game where you can bully lane and often snowball a lead, but instead of having a normal falloff point that many lethality champs deal with, transitioning to crit gives you insane late game damage potential as well. You can also run Dark Harvest over the standard keystone in the Precision tree, making the most of the more caster style early game that you get when you're playing lethality anyways. Aside from Samara, who was hit with a nerf this patch, I think we could all agree that she kind of deserved it, no other ADCs have been really standing out as particularly strong, so the previous statement about them being pretty weak is in general pretty much true. Tanks, bruisers, and assassins all have been able to run over games, so maybe in a few patches, Riot will give ADCs their turn. Only time will tell, so go ahead and stay tuned to find out. Aside from Janna, who is actually one of the best supports in the game at the moment, enchanters aren't doing so great. That being said, if you're opting to play one, then you need to itemize correctly. There's only been one standout mythic option, and that's Imperial Mandate. Where Moonstone Renewer and Shirelias are just really good for a single purpose, the Mandate's passive makes it versatile. The damage portion is good for trading, while the movement speed it grants to both you and the ally that triggers can be really useful for kiting or chasing down an enemy. With the removal of Athene's Unholy Grail, Imperial Mandate is the only item that directly rewards enchanters for going on defensive. If they're using their spells to dish out some harass on the opponents and consistently doing this, the damage adds up so fast. So if you're stuck on building Moonstone and trying really hard to have low interaction, consider following the trend and putting in at least a little bit of effort with Imperial Mandate. It really does go a long way. Like I said before, Janna aside, enchanters kind of suck right now, and the engaged supports are in. The best of these are Leona, Maokai, and Galio, though I should mention that Maokai may be engaged due to his flash root potential, but if you actually build him AP, you can rush Liandry's Anguish. That being said, you still have to run Aftershock and build into Demonic Embrace and Zanya's Hourglass, meaning that even with an AP build, you're not going to be immediately blown up. You're just not quite as beefy as the other true tanks in this role. Anyway, the reasons engaged champions are so good is due to how explosive fights have been in the preseason. Even tanks are dealing a ton of damage, so fights start and end very quickly, making it so that enchanters and mage supports, which thrive in a more extended scenario, just aren't as good as they were before the preseason.
And that will wrap things up for a meta update for patch 10.24. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to let us know what role you think will be OP for the start of the next season in the comments down below. We really love to see what you all have to say. That's all for now. I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, good luck on the Rift, happy Thanksgiving, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a wonderful day. Peace.